I am Pamela D. Marshall. I'm an author, peace ambassador, and I've worked with the Sunshine State Book Festival. And during our meeting, when we said this year that we were going to honor Florida authors, then I started in my spirit. We have to honor our daughter, Zora Neale Hurston, and offered to write a one-woman show. I've done other shows with African American women of historic significance. I do a one-woman show on Fannie Lou Hamer, a part of a production about African American women, and I play Ida B. Wells. I have played Frederick Douglass's wife, and so this opportunity to bring voice to a woman that Alice Walker, who I admire tremendously, called the genius of the South. And just Alice's journey of going to resurrect Zora Neale Hurston after the years of her obscurity for all of the reasons that we could talk about, but the fact that it did happen and that she was pretty much written out of the American literature realm, and she's played such a significant role. And I thought, what a wonderful way not to just have someone to say Zora Neale Hurston was a genius of the South when it comes to writers. Zora Neale Hurston was from Eatonville, Florida, and they have a Zora Neale Hurston festival every year. I felt like she deserved more than that. And so that's why, Jolene, I decided to write this one-woman show.
How long is the play?
The play is approximately 45 minutes, leaving some time for Q&A. I give voice to Zora's mother, Lucy Ann Potts, who was very instrumental in her life. She died when Zora was 13 years old. And that started Zora's wanderings, she called it, because her father remarried quickly to the woman that he was having an affair with while their mother was sick. And Zora didn't get along with this woman. Zora got sent to a boarding school in Jacksonville, Florida, but he only paid tuition for 1 year. So here now we have a 14-year-old that's having to work and try to pay her way to stay at the school. She leaves. That's a period of her life that we don't know a lot about, but she called it years of wandering. And she ends up in Boston, where she finds out that Morgan Academy, which is now Morgan State University, you could get your high school diploma. So Zora Neale told them that she was 16 years old. She was actually 26. And she went back to high school and got her degree, and then ends up the first African American at the all women's prestigious college, Barnard. And then she goes to Columbia, and that's what puts her on the path of her anthropological journey of studying and writing the stories of the people in the South, the people in Haiti, the people of the islands, sharing the stories of voodoo, sharing the spirituality of those in the South. Zora did some incredible things. Her determination, I'm going to write the way these people talk. And she had pushback on that because as a member of the Niggerati, which was the Black folks of the Harlem Renaissance, that's what Zora called it. It was like the paparazzi, but Zora gave them that name. We're talking about the Langston Hughes and the Cullens and all of those who were a part of the Harlem Renaissance. They were trying to leave everything that smelled like the South, and that includes the language, trying to leave it behind. And Zora was like, no, that's who we are. And I'm going to write our stories that way. And that's what she did.
Okay, so how many books did she publish?
There were 4 novels, and then there are other novels that were published after she died. Barracoon is one of them. She couldn't get anybody to publish that. Barracoon is the story of Cujo Lewis. He was on the last illegal slave ship that came to the United States of America. So he's still alive. She finds him and she spends many hours with him. There's video of him online. And she tells his story with Cujo Lewis's dialect. And the white publishers wanted her to clean it up. And Zora was like, no, this is what he said. And so this is part of the story in hearing him speak the way he spoke. And that was what was so wonderful about Zora. She wrote a book called Moses of the Mountain. She portrays Moses based on historically where Moses was, that Moses was a Black man. And she tells the story from that perspective. So the fact that a woman in the 20s and 30s and 40s had that kind of determination, and I think part of that came from the fact that she grew up in Eatonville, Florida. Eatonville was the first African American self-governed community in the United States of America. Zora's dad was the mayor for 3 terms. So she grew up in an area where she didn't feel inferior. Everybody making decisions looked like her. One of the challenges was she came out against desegregating the schools. So politically, she was on the opposite side of those who were pushing to integrate schools. She said, no, just give us the same resources. You're insulting me by saying that my brilliance cannot come forth unless I'm sitting next to a white child. No, my brilliance is my brilliance. We just need the same tools. I don't need to sit next to you. I don't need to be in an environment where I'm not welcome. And what Zora was fighting for then has proved to pan out today. I don't think African American children are any better now than they were when schools were segregated because education was the key. It is no longer being presented to them as the key to moving out of economic disparity that still faces many of our communities.
So, if she was alive today and doing her research, you think she would self-publish?
Absolutely. Even in the book that I wrote, The Art of Forgiveness, I talked about my daddy who worked on the railroad. My daddy was not much younger than Zora Neale. My daddy was born in 1912. So he was in that era. He worked for the railroad. And in one of the lines, I said, and they treated him like a nigger boy. He was a grown Black man, and they treat him like he was a nigger boy. I'm telling you what my daddy said. Now, that paints a different picture than just saying they treated him like a boy. Saying that what my daddy said was they treated him like a nigger boy. It really brings to you what that must have felt like as a grown man to have white men talk to you like you're a nigger boy.
Mm.
So one of the publishers said that I couldn't say that. And so I had to move on.
No, but you can say that's part of your history. I have no problem with it because you said it, he said it, you own it.
So I can only imagine what Zora faced and faced it not only from white publishers, but as I said, there were Black people in Harlem and who were working so hard at trying to bring a different image of Black people that they didn't want her writing that way. They felt like that she was placating to white people who wanted to show Black people in a lesser light. But Zora saw the richness in the culture. Her most popular work, Their Eyes Were Watching God, that Oprah turned into a movie. Zora Neale Hurston showed that we were humans, that we fell in love, that we could make love, that we were beautiful. Before then, they saw only things like that as it related to white characters. But Zora said, no, we can make love with the sweetness so sweet that it would make the Florida orange trees taste bitter.
Wow. That brings a lot of vivid imagery.
And her words do that. That's what I love so much about this. And I'll tell you, Jolene, from writing this play, I started writing another book called The Zora in Me. And
Oh,
so I am in this deadline of memorizing a show. And then I must write this because I think that's the beauty of Zora and the fact that Alice Walker worked so hard to resurrect her. Alice Walker is also in the play. So I portray Zora Neale Hurston's mother, Lucy Ann Potts, who gave physical birth to her, but planted in her to jump at the sun. Even if you don't make it, at least you'll get off the ground. And then Alice Walker comes through and says, I'm going to find this author that I stumbled upon. And so she went to Fort Pierce, Florida, and she was working for Ms. Magazine at the time. It was in the early 70s. And she wrote an article in search of Zora Neale Hurston. And that started the avalanche of those who also wanted to search and find out more about her.
So I'm hoping that her previous works have been saved digitally for all time.
Listen, I got to see her collection. Her largest collection is at
Oh,
the
nice.
University of Florida in their research library, the Smathers Library. And I spoke to the person that's over the collection, and she said Zora Neale Hurston's collection is the most requested in all of the University of Florida's library.
Nice.
Isn't
Nice.
it?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm all for saving history.
Here is another amazing story about Zora's work. So
Okay.
when she died in the old folks' home in South Florida, south of here, the house that she was living in, they were cleaning the house out and they started burning all the contents. There was a sheriff's deputy who knew Zora, and he passed by and he saw that this fire was happening. He gets out of his car and he starts spraying at the water hose and starts spraying down the contents in a trunk and the other papers that they were burning. And he saved Zora's works, kept them on his back porch for a year because he didn't know what to do with them. So some of the books that have since been published since she died came from that collection. And had he not come by in that moment, we would have lost more of Zora Neale Hurston. And there have been just so many people on the collegiate level and in the literary world who have just embraced this brilliance and have done everything that they can to help preserve it and then to help share it with high school students. High school students, many of them, their eyes were watching God is required reading. So some of the materials at the library, they're preserved and they're covered in plastic, but you can see where they were burned. Part of the collection was burned, but thank God enough of it was saved that there were other books that were published as a result of that.
That just hurts my heart when you say burning stuff.
I
Well,
know there's a whole collection. I must have moved it out of this space, but one of the collections is Zora Neale Hurston hitting a straight lick with a crooked stick. It's a collection of many of her short stories that she wrote for other publications. But
cool.
she died poor. She covered a trial that happened here in Florida. A Black woman killed a white man. They were having an affair. And I won't go into the details, but Zora was covering that trial. And she had been promised a certain amount of money for covering that. And then they decided not to pay her. And she went through a lot of heartbreak, a lot of heartache. Died when she was 69 years old in 1960, but left a mark, left a light for us to follow and then to beckon that Zora Neale energy, that light on us so that we too can create, that we can write, that we can stand on her shoulders and say to the world, I am who I am unapologetically.
Is there anything that you would like to share with young people about the play or the person or her readings, her books, anything like that?
Yes, we all have a story to tell.
Yeah.
Life is going to present all of us with challenges. That is part of the journey. It is one of my favorite quotes is a lump of coal would never be a diamond without pressure. And there are so many people, young and old, who don't understand that concept and don't understand how to get through those difficult times. Zora Neale represents, at one point she said, I don't understand anybody who would not want to enjoy the company, my company. I pity them, what they're missing out on it. We all have to embrace who we are, the spirit of us, who we are enough that it doesn't matter what anybody else says. There's a scripture that says, great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. Everybody has an opinion, but their opinion of you has absolutely nothing to do with who you are because They didn't even make themselves. So they definitely didn't make you. So how could they know who you are and what you're called to do? And so just be aware that there are those who don't know how to let their light shine. And when they don't know how to let their light shine, then they sure cannot shine any light on you. Your brilliance is already there. Let it shine.